Hey everyone, welcome to Data and Science Upstarts, where we cover entrepreneurial topics for data scientists and statisticians. My name is Glenn Callipy. Let's meet today's Upstart. Hey everyone, welcome back to our series on data science and statistical consulting. We have our friend Julia Varshavsky here to talk about identifying your first client. Julia, welcome back.
Thank you, Glenn.
Just real quick, could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Julia Varshavsky, and I'm the founder and CEO of Welcome Point. And what we do is I put together agile teams of drug development experts that help life science startups and healthcare startups with their product development.
Very cool. And on to the show. How did you identify your first client?
Well, thank you for that question, Glenn. I think I may be a little bit unusual in that identification process because my business model is sort of a new thing that I put together, and I have tried to identify facets of the pools of opportunities where I might pick up a client. And one of those pools is angel investment groups. They do see a lot of early stage life science companies and the healthcare companies come through. And so I joined a number of them, and they have a stream of folks who come present for investment. And so I joined both as doing a little bit of investing, but I also, that particular group that I was with and I am with, it allows for advising industry advisors. And so you get exposure through several venues to the pipeline. And so one of the founders that came on and they talked about their novel product in oncology, it was a preclinical stage company. And as I was listening to them, I saw a perfect opportunity for me to help them and my company to help them. And so it was easy because I was a part of that group. It was very easy to get an introduction to the CEO. And we had a conversation. I had a conversation with their leadership, CEO and COO, a small company, about the gaps that I saw. And specifically, it was very clear that they could benefit from better product positioning. They weren't quite sure what indication longer term to choose as their first indication for their product, and it could have been several along in oncology. But so they could have done some more competitive analysis that would take into account the biology of their molecule as well as competitive landscape and map it out more professionally for the investor community and for themselves. So that was one type of conversation that I had with them. And then it was also very clear that they could benefit from a manufacturing expert that would help them choose particular type of manufacturing that they would need to, formulation that they would need to pursue. It seemed that there may have been a lot of paths that they were trying to pursue at the same time. So we had the conversation along those lines, and after that, we liked each other, and I was able to identify because of the networks that I have very quickly the folks that they needed in the commercial space and the CMC space, and we signed a contract. And they work through this. These folks work for me, and I consult on the general product development strategy with them. So that's how I found my first client.
That's very cool. So essentially, in the process of your own working and being productive, you essentially happened to interact with enough people who had a skill set that you needed. I have to ask. So you said that there were gaps. You had identified some gaps with the company. Was the leadership of the company aware of those gaps prior to you bringing it up?
I think I probably landed on, well-prepared ears. I think they knew that, but somewhat. But at the same time, it was helpful for them to hear it from somebody who's done drug development before and also comes from the organization that has people that, investors. It's always helpful to have, again, in the business model that I operate with, it's always helpful to sort of bring in that perspective as well. And I see a lot of decks from startups. And
Like,
so
you're talking about like slide decks, like pitch
like
decks?
slide decks,
Okay.
product decks, decks that talk about company investor decks. They're usually product development decks. And so it's when you see a lot of these things in bulk, it's easy to compare. And so the gaps that I identified, was based on what I see other people present and the kind of questions that we all ask. So it was based on the product development experience that I've had putting, watching and designing product development plans in clinical development when I worked in corporate pharma. And so what you specifically do, for example, you have to understand the targeted commercial positioning and where your drug specifically would fit within that. You can go to lung cancer, you can go ovarian cancer, you can go breast cancer. Where do you go first? And the decision has to be based on the biology of the product, how long you think it's going to take to develop it, other specific characteristics of the molecule, which we call target profile. But ultimately, and you also need to take into consideration the competitive landscape and understand what the competition is doing, what molecules are in the pipeline, their pipeline, which is always hard to know, but you can get that information from various databases, and conference information is helpful. But so folks in commercial, they know how to do this and they have access. And it was very clear to me, like in that specific example, that there needs to be some tightening for them to understand towards what are they driving, where are they driving, and that particular piece needs to be much more clear in there, because that leads directly into the sizing of the market opportunity and all of those things.
So when you said that, essentially your advice or your identification of gaps fell on, you said like sympathetic ears or something like that. I guess one thing is that, and then now essentially you've talked about, like the market opportunity, what the competitive landscape is and things like that. One of the advantages of having the experience going in is that effectively they know that something is important or maybe something is wrong, but they don't have the exact skills to fix it themselves. And furthermore, that your expertise brings in things that they hadn't thought about. So effectively, it's something that they were aware of, but they didn't understand the entire scope of the challenge. And by showing that you would identify those things and discussing the entire scope of it and make them more aware, it effectively, one, cements the fact that you're an expert in this area, and two, shows them sort of the value that you'd be bringing in and that you'd be essentially solving some pain points.
Exactly. So you're trying to, you're selling yourself as well as, helping them. So you have to do a little bit of work up front, and put up, some pro bono time to help them understand what value you could bring. But, I'm invested in general in the founders and, love helping startups. So this kind of fits well with my social impact mission. And so I don't mind doing that. And I learn as well, I'm a startup founder myself. So I always, evaluate critically what works, what resonates. When I talk, when I say this, when I say that, what works. So you have to be quick on your feet. But if you have the heart in the right place, the mind will follow.
Yeah. Maybe we should just double down on this because I think it's important on the issue of doing your homework. And as you say, pro bono, what I consider just essentially like you have to come in prepared. It's sort of the relationship building aspect where effectively you aren't immediately trying to charge them as you're trying to learn, or feel out the important things. that they might need you to know. And so effectively, when you go in and do your homework for a company, one, you're getting a better understanding of what they might need, so you can actually deliver them value. And but people maybe might feel uncomfortable about that because they're saying, "Well, I'm just working for free here." Um, and I guess what I consider is the other aspect of that is that by putting in your due diligence in advance, you're essentially starting to build that relationship to show that you are the person who isn't just trying to do it for the money. You are trying to deliver some value to your
Well,
customer.
and I think the other way to look at it, they're delivering value to you too,
Hmm.
because you're building your business model. They're helping
Hmm.
you, and if you're starting out and you don't have a lot of credibility as a company, right, as an entity, you have to sort of be an apprentice a little bit.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
Yeah, that's a
think
great point.
that's my philosophy. Hmm.
Yeah, so basically, that as you are working with them, you are becoming more skilled and essentially helping define and, um, I guess, refine what your business model is, what the service that you're providing is, and while you're feeling through those things, they really are a partner in helping you figure that out. Maybe even a mentor in some ways.
Exactly. And there are intangible values that we bring
Mhm.
each other. I mean, I do introductions for them, they do introductions for me, right? So there's some things that not everything is paid in money.
Cool. And I guess maybe the final bit on this, which is like, so those are the positive aspects. And now here's the word of warning, where if you don't do your homework, you'll look like a fool. And I think that's something where, I don't mean to take things totally negative. But for example, Julie, I'm sure you've interviewed candidates before for like jobs and things like that. And the ones who didn't do any of their homework, it just comes across so poorly. And so effectively, it's not just you're doing this to build the relationship, but it's also your insurance policy to make sure that you don't make a fool of yourself by knowing nothing about the people you're trying to. So whether it's consulting on one hand or just doing a job application on the other, you got to do your homework about the company. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
cool. So maybe just to follow up real quick, a real short question on, say you're in the position of many of the listeners um, who are their early career or they're in grad school right now. Let's just do early career, a few years in the industry. Um, what are some traits that they should look for while they're trying to find their first client, or maybe what positions, situations should they place themselves in to maybe come in contact with whoever that first client might be?
Well, I think they need to think about what particular business they're building. So if
Hmm.
it's a consulting business and they're going on their own, let's say consulting for companies on statistical analysis plans or submission plans or statistical development aspects of statistical development strategy, working with the FDA and so forth. I think those kinds of relationship actually are clients are going to come to them. If they do
Hmm.
good work within their corporate world, they're probably, and they're thinking about consulting. That a lot of those folks that I know, they walk away already having one or two clients, and they don't start. Statisticians, I think, by nature, are kind of risk averse.
Hmm.
So a lot of folks don't jump the ship with steady income unless they have a couple of clients that they know would provide for them and their families. So I think again we're very fortunate. A lot of folks have clients very naturally, so they just come to them through the word of mouth, and that's the most of the consultant statisticians that I know. They have more clients knocking on their doors than they know how to have time to work with, and so we're sharing in that pool all the time. And even back to the first client, I think it's a referral usually by a colleague, by a former colleague, by a former boss, by just somebody who knows and worked with you.
Hmm.
That's how it usually happens. So not just in statistics, it happens in the entire kind of drug development pool of consultants, external consultants. That's how we're all connected, and we all help each other with the getting consultant jobs. So it's your network. So the advice is build your network
Hmm.
and keep it up.
Hmm.
Make sure you meet with people. You help them. If you see something come your way that you think somebody else could be a good fit for, engage do an introduction, and that kind of will come around and help you sometime.
Yeah, and I guess maybe the most important thing about building your network is do a really good job at whatever your current position is. Always do a good job. When people think about building your network, it isn't just showing up at conferences and shaking people's hands. It's when people know it's like, oh, here's a good statistician, here's a great scientist. Um, Distinguishing that you're a great scientist on top of just being a good statistician, I think is also one of those things where like it can really set the bar higher, and so that people feel comfortable putting their name in your hands, that they're essentially they trust you to do a good job and that you're not going to let them down. um is a great way to essentially then people feel comfortable saying, you know what, uh someone needs the job. It's like, oh, I know Julia can do this job. um she's done it before, I've seen her do great things, and they feel comfortable recommending you, for example.
Yeah, and as you said, Glenn, you have to establish credibility. So
Hmm.
you can do it by publishing, by going to conferences, doing external presentations, and then building your network. It's all very important. And yeah, and whatever you can, help others,
Hmm.
and they will help you when the time comes.
Great. And so I guess I know you're someone who has quite a bit of a network. I know that you have some networks of your own that you might like to mention right now, and we can put the name of these in the description. So if say someone's in the Bay Area looking to build their network, what would you suggest?
Well, for statisticians, I think a great company, a great nonprofit that's in the Bay Area is Bay Area Biotech Statistics Workshop. It's a group of statisticians who work in various pharma companies and diagnostics companies and biotech companies on the San Francisco Peninsula. And we all help each other with networking opportunities, mentorship opportunities, and exchanges of scientific thought. So that would be the company that I would look for to connect with if I'm in the Bay Area.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just say also, for example, I think we first started talking because of my podcast, and then you asked me to do an interview with Janet Wittes
Mhm.
for a BBSW conference, and now Janet is helping us, for example, with the series on consulting. So I think it's one of those things where like I'm so glad I didn't flub that interview. Someone asked you to do one thing, you do it, you build that relationship. Um, yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, it's like, I'm glad that, we spent a few hours talking, for example, when we first got to know each other about some of the ideas and some of the things that you might want to do for a conference, as opposed to me being like, well, what's Julia pay me? Nothing. I'm not going to give her any of my time, you know? So yeah, I think it's one of
Yeah.
those things where it's like, and now Janet's helping us with this. Kim Love, who's also helping work on the series, very similar thing where she asked me to, just have a conversation with some of the grad students on the ASA section, the American Statistical Association section that she's currently the chair of. You just do good work, and eventually enough of these people collate and
And
coalesce.
follow your heart,
Yeah.
do good work and follow your heart in the work you do. And then things will start happening around that. So I think like what unites the three of us, besides, all being trained as statisticians, Janet, yourself, and myself, is, we all care about mentorship,
Hmm.
right? And that's and entrepreneurship, and that's how we came together. And that's just kind of that thread continues to grow in this various ways, and
Hmm.
there, hopefully there will be others who will join this initiative, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
I think
great.
something good will happen.
Yeah, and I guess if anyone is listening and wants to be part of what's happening, feel free to pop your comments and questions in the comment section below, and we'll start rattling off answers to them as we can have time. So thanks again, Julia, for your conversation today, and I look forward to our next one.
Thanks for having me.